What is up, everybody? I hope you are having a fantastic evening. It is mailbag night. That's right. Listen, we are a week away from the legal tampering period. And what's great about this week is teams are jockeying for position to get ready for the free agency period, which means a couple of things. One, it means they're going to re-sign or attempt to re-sign the players they really want to keep before they hit the open market. And they're going to start cutting players and trimming fat on the roster to be ready to sign players from other rosters. So this is where players that are a little bit more expensive, but are good players, sometimes get released. Players you're not expecting to get released start to hit the open market. So this week is actually a really fun build-up week. We'll see what maneuvering the 49ers do, if any, but just 1 week away from the legal tampering period. That being said, there's been a lot that's happened. Obviously, the Deebo Samuel trade, the Aiyuk rumors, we got the Brock Purdy contract still out there. Is Dre Greenlaw going to come back? Is Devontae Adams going to be a 49er? Like, there's a lot of things that I know are lingering questions. What about Myles Garrett? All of this stuff. And I figured I would just open up a mailbag, see what's on your guys' mind. Maybe it's none of those things. I don't know. I'll check it out here in a minute. That being said, let's hit this intro. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. As I said, it's mailbag night. I see Notorious Gab in here. Haven't seen him for a while. He says, I'm trying to stay awake from for this, but no promises. I know it's like crazy time over there. You know what, though? I will spare you some time. I was scrolling through this, and thought I saw a question from you. I don't know. I don't see it now. My bad. I'm going to go through these in the order in which I see them. Just got my phone sitting here. So if I'm looking down, that's why I'm looking at my phone. And hopefully I come up on your question soon, Gab, so that you can go back to sleep or go to sleep. I see Dave in here multiple times. Nice to see you, Dave. Appreciate you. All right. Madge Sports. What's up, Madge? He says, with Deebo being gone, any player that you think the Niners should get that would be his best replacement? I don't know if you guys have seen all of a sudden, but like on X, the replacement's in-house. His name is Tariq Owens. It's like, no, he's not the replacement. If Tariq Owens is the replacement, then we've got some other issues. I mean, this is a player who barely made the roster. He's got an awesome last name. I get it. He's going to be 26 years old. I don't know that he'll even ever sniff the active 53. If he does that, that would be incredible. I don't know that they need to replace Deebo Samuel, but whoever it is, like, they shouldn't replace Deebo with another Deebo clone. They should just get a regular wide receiver. Deebo was fantastic with Jimmy Garoppolo, and we all agree that Brock is better than Jimmy, right? But the skill set of Jimmy Garoppolo required a Deebo Samuel. The skill set of Brock Purdy and the way that Deebo plays doesn't necessarily jive. They don't need another Deebo. They just need to get a standard wide receiver. I mean, honestly, if Aiyuk can return to form, then hopefully Pearsall's just that replacement. So I don't think they need to like go out and get somebody. But if they do, it just needs to be a regular traditional wide receiver. I don't even know who this one's from. Doesn't have a name on it. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Richard Jimenez says, hey, Jesse, 2-part question. One, if BA were to get traded, what do you think he is worth coming back from an injury? And do you think we should have traded Deebo for Jonathan Allen since the Commanders were trying to trade him as well? BA, I would imagine, is probably worth basically what Deebo just got traded for. I mean, think about this. For a team trading for Deebo, here's why a team would trade for Deebo. It's essentially a 1-year rental. You're not locked into him long term. He's not coming off of a major injury. Yes, he didn't perform to the level that you're used to seeing, but he's still not old by football terms. Now, maybe he's aged quicker because he played wide back, what have you. But again, there's really no risk with Deebo Samuel. There's no long-term risk. With Aiyuk, though, we all agree that this stage Aiyuk, if Aiyuk were healthy at this stage, is better than Deebo Samuel at this stage. But Brandon Aiyuk is coming off of a significant injury. And there is long-term ramifications to bringing him into the building. You're not just locked into a 1-year deal with him. So I would imagine that Brandon Aiyuk is worth roughly what Deebo was worth, maybe even less. Maybe it's a fifth, maybe it's a sixth, something like that. But I think that's the range. If a team was even going to take that on, he had a significant injury. So I'm sure that whoever brings him in would want to do significant testing. The problem is that the 49ers likely would want to get more. And so it makes it really, really hard to see that he is for sure gone. But also, do you want to be locked into this contract? It sounds like you regretted it. I think there's a lot of moving parts here. We'll see how it ends up going. But I'd say a fifth or a sixth, to be real with you, based off of the injury in the contract. Do I think they should have traded Deebo for Jonathan Allen? No. I think if they truly want Jonathan Allen, they traded Deebo for the fifth. Jonathan Allen's likely going to get cut because I don't think anybody's going to want to take that contract on. And the 49ers can just go sign him for cheaper. So they can get the best of both worlds, really. Go get Jonathan Allen for a cheaper deal and get a fifth round pick for Deebo. So Matthew GB says 2 questions. Ooh, a lot of 2 questions in here. Says, what year did the 49ers have the best O-line in the Shanahan era? And which player do you think the 49ers should draft in round 1? What year was the best? First year Trent Williams, maybe? I don't know. I don't know. That's tough. I'm not sure what year was the best. It'd be hard to say a non-Trent Williams offensive line was the best. I felt like 2019 was pretty good though. I don't know. I don't this kind of goes to probably the reason for your questioning though, which is they've never really had a great offensive line. If they had a really good offensive line, it would stand out. Be like, "Oh yeah, no, this was 2022 or whatever." But they haven't had a great offensive line from left to right. So, I don't know. It's probably debatable. And then which player do you think the 49ers should draft in round 1? Best player available. Doesn't really matter. Gosh, man, I truly would be fine with probably 5 to 6 players at that spot. I would. If they drafted whoever the best wide receiver is, whether that's McMillan or what have you, believe it or not, I'd be okay with that. If they draft whoever they feel like is the best secondary player, whether that's Jahdae Barron or Campbell or something, I would be okay with that. Whoever they deem is the best tackle, I would agree with that. Defensive tackle, defensive end. I mean, there really is a lot of ways they could go. I think the only player that I could see them drafting that I would be disappointed in would be Warren. And not that I don't think Warren can be a good player or will be a good player necessarily. I just don't know that he's the best tight end in this draft. And I feel like drafting him would, I think they can do better. I think they can do better. And Genty too. I love Genty. I do. But I would be disappointed if they drafted him as well. But really, outside of that, I mean, they drafted the best player available at all those other positions I named, I think I would probably be okay with it. Good question. Um, Chua says, "What do you think we will do at pick 11? Trade back or draft Trent's?" He says Trent's player. I assume he means Trent's replacement. Well, if it's trade back or draft Trent's replacement, I would say draft Trent's replacement. I would like to trade back. I think if the 49ers traded back like 5 spots, they could still get a really good player. I think Walter Nolan might still be there. I think Jahdae Barron might still be there. A good receiver would still be there. I think good interior offensive lineman would still be there. So I'd be fine with trading back. I imagine that they're going to draft, though. I do think that. Here we go. Here's a question from Gav. He says, "Do people care about the walkout without Deebo?" Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I asked the question on Twitter. I said, "So, who gets the boombox in the divorce? Does it go with Deebo or does it stay with Trent?" That's the real burning question here that we need answers to. I don't know. I mean, will they keep that? Was it a Deebo Trent thing? I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I'm curious to see if it sticks around. AES Quivel Carry says, assuming Aiyuk is traded, what would be the minimum threshold of success for Shanahan to keep his job in 2026? So if Aiyuk gets traded, what does Shanahan need to do? I don't know. Who are you asking? I mean, are you asking me or are you asking? I mean, I know you're asking me, but is the question based off of what I think Jed York's minimum threshold is or what my minimum threshold is? My minimum threshold is you got to win a playoff game. I think all like the wheels would have to fall completely off for Shanahan to be let go. I think Jed York likes Shanahan a lot. I think there's good reason for that. But I think his leash for Shanahan would be much longer than yours or mine or a lot of people's. So I think it would take a lot for him to be gone. Alien Jazz Party says, Jesse, if Robert Saleh has a decent season, a top 10 defense, and Kyle has another bad year, could Saleh become the next head coach in 2026? Appreciate that, Daryl. Maybe. I mean, I will say this. They at least have somebody in-house that you would feel pretty comfortable turning the keys over to. I don't know that they would do that though. I feel like if they moved on from Kyle that they would just move on from the whole regime. But maybe. I mean, I could see Saleh potentially taking over. I think it is interesting. It's an interesting question. Notorious Gav says, when will we know if Juice is coming back? I know he's $6 million against the cap this year. So do you see him negotiating a pay cut, getting cut, or playing out next year? Man, I really thought he was going to get cut last year. That wasn't the case. It's hard for me to predict that because again, he's a Kyle Shanahan player. I'll go with he takes another pay cut and he'll be with the team for one more year. And then he's gone next year. I know that you like love Juice, man. You're like Juice's biggest fan. I'll say he sticks around for one more year. Hopefully that makes you happy. Sasha Brady says, what 5 49ers have the highest trade value in your view? Okay, well, let's establish that. There is a second part to this question. Highest trade value. No particular order. Bosa, Warner, Bosa, Warner, Purdy. Gosh, I feel like they just don't have a lot of major assets anymore. Bosa, Warner, Purdy, Kittle, Demo. I don't know. Am I missing somebody? It's not CMC. He's too old. Trent's up there. So I doubt it's either of them two. Yeah, that's who I'll go with. So no particular order. Bosa, Warner, Purdy, Kittle, Diamador, Lenore, I would say. Okay. If the team were to sacrifice 2025 in order to bounce back in 2026, which of the five would you let go? For instance, if Kittle could garner a first round pick in a trade, do you think cashing in would be the right thing to do? I love George Kittle, and I'm advocating for them extending George Kittle, and I hope he retires a 49er. I highly doubt he would get a first in return. But if somebody was really willing to give a first round pick for Kittle, I would be totally fine with Kittle walking. Totally fine with Kittle walking. I think if somebody gave 2 first rounds for Bosa, see you later. 2 first rounds for Fred Warner, sayonara. A first round for Purdy, peace. Like I'm totally fine letting any player walk. I think any player is for the right price is able to go. But it would never happen. But yes, certainly for Kittle, a first round pick, I would do it for sure. Dave, funny question. I'm not going to answer it. Stevo Supremo, what's up, Stevo? He says, with the NIL deals, do you see the 5th round gems disappearing? That's a good question. I think that that's a really good question. I think that's why Washington was so willing to part with a 5th round pick. Because I saw it and I was like, all right, maybe Deebo, 5th, 6th round pick, but most likely, like, nobody's really gonna give that for him. So they'll end up having to release him, and we'll see if they do a post June 1st. But at max, they'll get a 5th round pick, and they got the 5th round pick. But I do think that plays into it. I won't say for sure. It's not like there aren't any gems in the 5th round. I mean, Bo Limmer went round 6 last year. Hell of a player. And there are other players like him. But I think you raise an interesting point. I do think that the NIL deal does mean that there are less possible gems out there. I do. I think these players now have choices. A 5th round pick can stick around in college, make more money, and have more stability by transferring to another school. And then maybe they up their draft value. And that's, if you notice, a lot of these players are older players because they're sticking around longer. So, yeah, I think NIL definitely changes some things for sure. It's a great question. He also says solid join to make the defense better with lesser talent. Is that why they are getting rid of Kyle's expensive toys? Um, I think they're just trying to future proof, and I think they realize that this team is probably not winning a Super Bowl in 2025. And at least Deebo Samuel is not going to be the difference in whether they do or don't win a Super Bowl. So that's why he was expendable. If somebody were to make the right offer for Aiyuk, if somebody today offered a 3rd rounder for Aiyuk, he'd be gone. I'd guarantee it. But they're not going to get that. So that makes it harder to move on. I just think that these players that they are shopping and looking to potentially get rid of are expensive and not bringing value, not bringing the talent that matches the value anymore. Fa Hugh, nice. Says Jesse, I know you agree with the Niners moving on from Deebo, but would you agree with trading Aiyuk? If so, why and for who? Thoughts on picking up DK Metcalf if the price is right and available? DK Metcalf, I highly doubt they would trade him within division. I mean, that would be, I don't think that's ideal for them. I don't know. DK is interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of DK. I think he plays smaller than what his size is. DK, the reason DK is so interesting to me is because I think DK outplayed what I expected him to be in the NFL. I didn't think he'd be a good route runner. I thought he was all show, no go, and he's been better than that. So he's exceeded the expectations of what I thought he would be, and I think a lot of people probably thought he would be. But now that he's been in the league for a while and you see his body type and you see that he can produce in the NFL, now you expect him to be a dominant player, and it just doesn't seem like he'll ever be that. Like when him and AJ Brown were teammates, AJ Brown was clearly the better player. Now DK made all the waves because of his physique and all of that, but AJ was a much better player, a much better prospect. He's doing what you would expect DK to do at his size and his speed, and he's just not doing it. So although he exceeded my initial expectations, he's not meeting the new expectations based off of his body type. So he's interesting. I'm not the biggest DK fan. Yes, I definitely would advocate for moving on from Aiyuk. If there was a team that was willing to take him, uh, who I wouldn't be a who, it'd be a draft pick of some sort. And why? Just because I don't know what he'll be. I don't know what he will be. And I think freeing up that kind of money when you have an opportunity to do so on damaged goods is always a smart move. So yeah, I would be willing to move off of IU for probably a lot less than most people in the chat would. Jaybird says, what do the 49ers have to get done this offseason for it to be an A or A plus offseason? And if they do that, what would the season expectations be from you? My A or A plus offseason is not going all in and trying to compete this year. So for me, continuing to do like what they did with Deebo, do that with more players, be willing to say no to some of these bigger contracts. Make sure that when you do negotiate with Brock, that it's a deal that you can live with long term and that there are outs just in case. If somebody offers anything for Brendan Aiyuk, let him go. Like that would be the A plus off season. Like hiring Robert Saleh was awesome. They get an A plus for that. Getting rid of Deebo was smart. They get an A plus for that. But to me, as long as they don't sign any long-term new names to this team that are older and expensive, that's a really good offseason because I'm more worried about 2026 and beyond than I am 2025. I just don't think that this team was going to win a Super Bowl in 2025 or this upcoming season. And them getting rid of Deebo doesn't help me think that they will. Not that it hurts it a ton. I think that they're aging. They're too expensive. They don't have enough depth and they need to build towards the future. So as long as all the moves they're making are short-term deals, younger players, if they are a long-term deal, not having bad contracts where they don't have early outs in them, like that's an A or an A plus offseason. And what are my personal expectations? If they go the route that I would like them to go, just play the young players and fight for a playoff spot. I would be okay with that. Like if I was the owner and this was the type of offseason I wanted, I would be going to Shanahan and Lynch, assuming that the relationship is good with them, and say, listen, I trust what you guys are doing. However, the window is closed. So let's stop acting as if it's not closed. Let's field the most competitive team we can field without mortgaging the future, without getting into a bunch of bad contracts. And if the opportunity presents itself to get rid of some of these aging veterans and get draft capital and free up long-term cap space, let's take advantage of it every single time. And if at the end of this offseason, the roster is clearly not up to snuff. I'm not going to hold you to a standard that's just not realistic. Just make sure you continue to build this team. You develop. We make sure that this draft class is a home run hit. You play as many young players as possible, develop the heck out of them, and let's look towards next year. Next year, we're going to have a bunch of free cap space. I'll open up my pocketbooks again, and we'll make a run again in 2026 and beyond. And that would be it. But, I mean, that's just, I don't think that that's a conversation that's probably being had. So, but that would be my expectations. Kill Switch says, why after 7 years in the league, NFL analysts still can't say Deebo's full name right? It's Deebo Samuel, not Deebo Samuels. Just shows that no one really watches football and catches them when on primetime or playoffs only. More of a comment. Did you guys see that Shady McCoy said that Deebo Samuel is still the best player in the NFL with football in his hands? This is why you can't take a player's word seriously just because they were an ex-player. Dave says, as you age, will you keep that pick in your intro? Yeah. You know how much younger I look there than I will in a couple years in real life? Duh. No, I don't know. Mike Drops with Monza says, this a call-in show? No, not tonight. Just a mailbag. Just a mailbag. Dave says, get a Comica mic and got a Comica mic and a good tripod today. New video tomorrow. Nice, dude. I'll check it out. That's awesome. I love getting new equipment for your channel, man. Putting back into your channel. It's awesome. Yeah, no doubt. That was straight from the horse's mouth, I'm sure. Straight from the horse's mouth. Does a Brock Purdy deal? Okay, this is Mike Drops, actually. Speaking of, wow, that's crazy. Does a Brock Purdy deal ignite the hot seat for Kyle, or is it already hot for the head coach and not the GM? I don't know that it ignites a hot seat per se, but think about this. Like all the outs that Kyle Shanahan has had over the last few years when things haven't gone right. When they didn't win the Super Bowl in 2019, Jimmy Garoppolo's fault. They have a bad 2020. Again, Jimmy Garoppolo could have played. He didn't. His fault. They replace him with a rookie quarterback, Trey Lance. It doesn't work out. Then they get back there again to the Super Bowl after a couple failed attempts, and it's Steve Wilkes' fault. It was the defense's fault. Well, what is the excuse now? If you agree to extending Brock Purdy, you've got Brock Purdy long term. So you've chosen your quarterback, and you've got Robert Saleh, who is clearly the best option available, a guy that you know is good. Like there's no question marks about Robert Saleh. Everybody in that building knows that Robert Saleh is an elite defensive coordinator. So you can't put it on him. You can't put it on the offensive coordinator because that's you. And if you agree to Brock Purdy long term, you're tied to Brock Purdy. So what is the out? Whose fault is it if things don't go well? So in that sense, yeah, he's backed himself into a corner. But again, I really don't look at this as being a boom or bust season for the 49ers or for Shanahan in particular. I don't know that there's a scenario other than not making the playoffs. And even then I question, would he really truly be fired? We would fire him. I would fire him. You would fire. But I don't know that Jed York would fire him. I really don't. Like I have my doubts that they would move on. So I don't know how hot that seat is, if at all, for Kyle. Spidey G says, do you think the 49ers should trade Purdy if he insists on $60 million? I think they should. Purdy had a better team than Jimmy G and lost in the Super Bowl to the Chiefs, just like Jimmy G did. Yes, he's better than Jimmy G, but he's not elite. I'd only pay him $60 million if he was elite. If he insists on 60 million, then I would trade him and for some draft picks and roll with Mordecai or Darnold. Yeah, I mean, bottom line is I just Brock Purdy or anybody, if they're not an elite quarterback and they're commanding elite quarterback money, I just wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. And that it doesn't matter who it is. It just happens to be Brock Purdy at this moment. No, I wouldn't pay Brock Purdy. I've been pretty clear about that. Not that kind of money. There is a number I'd be comfortable with. I mean, truly, if he came in around 45 AAV, and again, this here's the other thing: AAV is not the most important thing. How is this contract structured? Like when we talk AAV, there's so many other things that go into this. How is the contract structured? That's really what's important. So when I look at this, and you could have a contract that's 60 million AAV, but it's structured phenomenally, or you could have a contract that's 45 million AAV that's structured horribly. So how is it structured? Really, for me, I'm looking for a couple of things. Is it relatively cheap for the first 2 years? And is there an out after year 2? And if there's an out and it's reasonable and he's relatively inexpensive for the first 2 years, I don't care if it's 100 million AAV. I really don't. Like, it's kind of irrelevant. How is the contract structured? That's the most important thing. Now, if those are the things that I'm looking for in the contract and he's just unwilling to budge and it's like, no, I need more money and this and that, and I don't want it out until after year 3, and you want to do a 4-year deal, I want to do a 6-year deal, whatever, then no, I'm not going to acquiesce to anything he wants to do. And if he doesn't like it, then tough luck. Like, what are you going to do? Sit out? Try me. That would be my attitude. I'm totally fine with Brock Purdy at 5.5 or 6 million or whatever he is this year, and making him play it out. Totally fine with that. So, let's see here. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I got it all. Perfect. Here, let me refresh this real quick. Oh, hold on. A couple more popped in there. Okay. Mike Drop says, okay, I'll sit on the take I have. What about not drafting 2 interior defensive linemen starters in the draft? I know offensive line is in need, but 2 defensive tackle needs to be added. Okay. What about not okay, all right. I see what you're doing. All right. What about not drafting 2 interior defensive linemen starters in the draft? I know offensive line is in need, but 2 defensive tackles need to be added that can have an impact on defense. Is drafting 2 defensive linemen with the 2 earliest picks a bad idea? No, absolutely not, Mike Drops. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I mean, if I'm doing, in fact, I did this the other day. Let me, and I didn't upload it here. I did this on Bleacher Report, and then for some reason I couldn't download the video to put it here. So I will give you my positions of need, and you guys tell me if you agree. Here's my top 10 order of importance. Defensive tackle. So I agree with you here. Defensive tackle, because you need 2 of them. They don't have a single worthy starting defensive tackle on this whole roster. Not a one. They need 2. So defensive tackles, number 1. Left guard, number 2. Corner, number 3. Linebacker, 4. Safety, 5. Tackle, 6. Running back, 7. Center, 8. wide receiver 9, tight end 10. But regardless of whether you agree with me on the whole list, I bet you most of you would agree. Just type a Y or an N if you agree with this statement. Defensive tackle is the most important position to take care of this offseason because they need 2 versus 1. That's my thinking. Y or N? Y or N? Y if you agree, N if you disagree. No. Okay. No. Wow. Okay. 187 agrees. We never agree. That's good. I don't know. I feel like the world might end on that one. Hell yes. I'm actually shocked that not everybody's a yes on this one. No. 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 Okay. All right. All right. All right. Listen. No. Hold on a second. The question was not because Mike said no and then gave an offensive lineman's name to draft. No. The question is not what should they draft at pick 11. That is not the question. All right. That is not the question. The question is what is the position this offseason that needs the most attention? Like, what is the most important to address this offseason? Not who the best prospect is, not who you want to draft and what position do they play. What is the one position that needs the most TLC? To me, it's defensive tackle. They don't have a single one on the roster. Not one. Okay, so Mike agrees. Jared agrees. I just want to make sure that we have the right stipulations. I'm not saying they have to take a defensive tackle at 11. Wi-Fi says left tackle. Okay, you put it like that, defensive tackle. Yeah, they can't stop the run. Okay, so most people actually agree. Now that I've kind of cleared up the parameters, most people agree. Some people still think it's like offensive tackle. I would disagree, clearly. But all right. We definitely all agree that they need to address it though. Like no matter what, they do need defensive tackles. So if they took 2 defensive tackles in round, out of the first 3 rounds, I don't think too many people would be that mad because they truly do need 2 of them. Like that's what they need. Have you looked at the schedule and decided what games you will attend? Yes, I've looked at the teams they're playing. It all depends on when these games fall. They're in Tampa, so I'll be at that one. I mean, as long as I'm in town. If it's like during Thanksgiving week, I'll be out of town. So most likely I'll be at the Tampa game. Outside of that, I don't know. Oh, it really depends on where these fall. Emanwari at 11? I don't know about that. That's the safety, right? I mean, the problem is like he's a freak show athletically, but like so was Taylor Mace. So was Jeremy Chin. You know what I mean? It's like I would feel a lot better with Jade Barron at 11 than I would Emanwari. 11 is way, way, way too. I think he's a second round prospect. 11's way too early for me. Mike Drop says, I have 2 defensive tackle, 1 and 2 is most important to get third and long, and the most important to maximize Bosa, then cornerback, then guard, then tight end, linebacker, free safety, tackle, running back. You got tight end in there twice. But yeah, I mean, I think we have the same positions, just different orders for sure. I mean, is there anything that we're missing? I feel like, but see, and that's the crazy thing too. For those of you that think the 49ers like are a championship contending roster this upcoming year, I just named 10 position groups of need. 10, legitimately 10. And in most of these scenarios, we're talking starting level players that they need to get there. You just can't address all of those in one offseason. They for sure need 2 defensive tackles. That's 2 starters they need. They need a starting outside corner. That's 3 players. They need a starting safety. Like they have to have a starting free safety. They need a starting will. Now maybe Greenlaw comes back or I don't know, but right now as it stands with free agency looming, those are the 5 they need. They need a starting left guard. Those are the starters. Wide receiver, they need a good player at the very least, somebody that's going to at least spot start until Aiyuk is back. And if they trade Aiyuk, then they definitely need a starting level wide receiver. We don't know what we're going to get from CMC, so they need a guy who can at the very least split with CMC. I mean, we're talking about a lot of different position groups. A lot of different position groups. They just can't. It's not feasible to address all of them in one offseason. It's just not. So you have to prioritize. You have to figure out what that's going to be. But this roster is going to have holes on it no matter what this upcoming season. It just is. The Niners are in rebuild mode for the future in order to be a contender again. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they view it that way. But all day, every day, Kim says, my opinion, the 49ers will bring in serious quarterback competition. Maybe. The Jedi, we just talked about Emanwari, actually. Hear me out. Nick Emanwari in the first round. I heard you out. I saw your evidence. I dismissed the charges. All day, every day, Kim says, draft the trenches either way. Yes, tons of drafting of the trenches. I agree. Mike drops. Yep. We got that one. Jedi says, so is Sean Taylor. No, for sure. But listen, are you betting that Emanwari is Sean Taylor, Cam Chancellor? Or is it more realistic that he's Jeremy Chin? Maybe not Taylor Mays, but let's say Jeremy Chin. Like if I said he's one or the other, he's either on the Sean Taylor, Cam Chancellor trajectory or Jeremy Chin. What would you say? Just based off of what his film shows. I get like his relative athletic score was a 10. So is Jeremy Chin's. Like I personally don't see Sean Taylor or Cam Chancellor. Now, could he eventually get to being a Cam Chancellor? Sean Taylor's a whole different level. Could he? I mean, maybe, but at 11, that's a heck of a risk, man. That is a heck of a risk. If you told me that was pick 43, okay, I'd feel much better about it. But at 11, no way, man. I didn't even say Taylor Mays. He could be Taylor Mays. Talk about a freak athlete. I did earlier, but in this instance, it was more the scale Cam Chancellor, Jeremy Chin. And Jeremy Chin's a decent player. He's just not what his relative athletic score says he is. Mike Drop says, low key, our roster sucks. You named 10 starter needs. Yeah. It doesn't suck. It's just not as good as what I think. We just assume that it's good because it's the 49ers and it's been good. I just like player for player. They're not as good as the Eagles. They're not as good as the Lions. Are they as good as the Rams? Are they as good as... They're not as good as the Ravens. Player for player. I don't know. If I comb through roster for roster, I mean, the 49ers might have, I mean, they're probably still a top 10 talent roster, maybe even top 7-ish. But I don't think they're a lock top 5 anymore. I don't know that they are. So for me, it's like, I don't know. I mean, they have some ground to make up. 808 Niner says trade down and draft Harmon. Draft the Ducks. I'm all for drafting Ducks. I saw somebody good friend Jordan Elliott, actually. Not the 49ers Jordan Elliott, but the actual cool Jordan Elliott. Follow him on Twitter. He said that the 49ers should consider drafting Harmon at 11. It's the first I've heard that. I wouldn't feel good about Harmon at 11. Listen, I love the Ducks, but that's too rich for my blood. You know what's funny is before I started like watching the prospects and kind of seeing where they were going, somebody asked me about Harmon, like, hey, what about Harmon at 43? This was like a month ago. And I'm like, I'd feel good if you could get him in the third round. I don't know how good I'd feel about 43. And now it sounds like he might go in the first round. I'm straight. If he's really good, that's awesome. But at 11, again, it's way too rich for my blood. And that's the thing is I'm not saying that these players like what Eminwari or whatever his name is, Eminwara, Harmon, that they can't be really good. That's not what I'm saying, but it's all about what the prospect is and what's his value at the moment in which they're drafted. And for me, neither of them are worth the 11th pick overall. Papa says, I'm with you about 2026, but having an easy schedule this year is conflicting. I totally agree with that. Chance at a high seed when you're only a couple of games away from the Super Bowl at Levi's. Deebo's not needed, but kind of wanted them to try one last time. No, I totally get it. I mean, because you look at the roster, it still has some talent. It's not like they're just trash. I mean, that's not the case. You see the easy schedule, and it's like, okay, well, maybe they could. Yeah, I mean, listen, they could make the playoffs. I don't know. I don't expect them to win any playoff games, but who am I? I mean, they could win a playoff game, and then what? You're 2 games away from a Super Bowl. Like anything can happen. So I understand what you're saying. I'm not. Listen, I'm not advocating for just getting rid of every single player and not trying to be competitive at all. I'm just saying if you're going to try to be competitive this year, don't prioritize being competitive in 2025 to mortgage the future. Like if there's a player in front of you that you're deciding on, should we sign them or should we not, or should we trade for them or should we not? If the question is, or excuse me, if the answer is this player is great for now but doesn't help us in the future, then don't do it. Your answer is absolutely do not pursue that player. If it's only a 1 year, this player is good now but doesn't help us in the future, or more, even worse, like mortgages some future assets, absolutely not. That is not the route I would take. Now, if you can get a good player who's younger that can help for many years to come and sign them long term, sure, I'm definitely open to it. I'm totally open to that. But like for me, when people talk about, oh man, God, I mean, they should Miles Garrett and 2 first round pick. No, for why? I'm not. Miles Garrett's going to be 30 years old this year. Think 30 years old. So I should give up 2 first round picks, extend and give a ton of money to a 30-year-old player for what? They're not going to win a Super Bowl because you add Miles Garrett. That's not going to be enough. Absolutely not. I don't care if the Cardinals or the Rams or Eagles or whoever, I don't care. I'm not doing it. The 49ers are not in the same spot as some of these teams are. So no. No, 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 no. But if it's, hey, you can get, I don't know. I can't think of a player off the top of my head that fits this criteria. But you can get a player that's good that's an edge rusher, not elite, but good, that's 26 years old and is a fraction of the cost, and you can get him in free agency and not give up draft assets, then yes, for sure. Like, I'm not saying don't pursue anybody, just screw this year. That's not my stance. I'm just not willing to mortgage anything in the future to go all in this year. I think that would be a stupid move. And I feel like the 49ers at the very least agree with that, or seemingly they agree with that. Yeah, and this is true too. I mean, just because the schedule looks easy, how do you know? I mean, listen, I think if I would have told you that the 49ers were going to they got swept by the Cardinals, right? If I told you the 49ers were going to go 1-5 in the division before the season started, you'd have been like, huh, nice one, bro. 1-5 in absolutely not. So you just never know. I mean, right now Chicago looks really easy, but free agency, draft, they had some talent. Ben Johnson's put together a really good coaching staff on the surface. If they won 10 games next year, I mean, would you be completely shocked? I wouldn't. You know what I mean? So you don't know for sure. Um, Cleveland in Cleveland. I mean, we've seen that before, right? I think they play Cleveland in Cleveland. I mean, if that's a rainy, cold, windy day, you might lose to, I don't know, Gardner Minshew or whoever their quarterback is. That just happened a couple years ago where they lost to literally a nobody. So you just don't know. You don't know. Uh, yeah, there you go. You're betting on the Bears to win the division. Rodgers is washed and sucks. Listen, I'm not advocating. I am not one of those guys that's like, just go get Rodgers. Like, that's not my stance. Um, he's certainly not Aaron MVP Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he sucks either. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I don't know. He's not a needle mover at this point in his career, though. Like, comparatively to what he was, sure. But is he still, I don't know, the 17th best quarterback in the league? Yeah, I think he is. Dave Sims says, I said 7 out of 10. I was called, or 7 and 10. I was called crazy. They did worse. You did say 7 and 10 before the season started. That was pretty bold. That was pretty bold. Let's see. Yeah, listen, yeah, I don't think bringing in Aaron Rodgers is the answer for anything other than it's a desperate offseason and you're trying to sell tickets. Dazza says supposedly Brock is better than Burrow, Stroud, Herbert, and they had either um, bad or okay offensive line. So maybe they should draft defensive line. Brock will make the O line better. Fair statement. Um, I don't know if you saw the stat, but it was like um, the pressure rate in the Super Bowl for Mahomes was the highest it had been in his whole career, and it it was still like on par or lower than CJ Stroud's average pressure rate the whole season. So it's like literally CJ Stroud on average is playing the worst offensive line unit or offensive line production that Patrick Mahomes has ever had for a one game stretch. It's like, geez, man. We think our O line's bad. The Texans O line is garbaggio. It is so bad. It is absolute trash. Absolute trash. Let's see. Great one. I swear. Kyle should be fired just for going away from Mason. Yeah, that whole thing was super weird. I don't know how you justify not playing Mason more when CMC came back. That whole thing didn't make any sense at all. At all. I don't know. Who's blaming Purdy for everything? Who's dude? Who's the dude you speak of? Um, Kyle has a habit of making unknown running backs famous. Maybe we could farm picks that way. Yeah, maybe. I do. Okay. Like this is like the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? Like not everything was Brock's fault. It just wasn't. Um but like saying, "Oh, the play calling sucked. Every player around Brock sucked." Like what was he supposed to do? Like come on. We can't go that way either. Like we can't say everything's Brock's fault, but we can't say nothing's his fault. We can't say nothing is his fault. This is an accurate statement. It was okay. It wasn't great by any means. And it needs to get better. Offensive line play in the NFL is just not good. That's the crazy part, right? Like we look at the I think most 49er fans view the 49ers offensive line as the worst in the league. And it was like 13th best. So if we all agree, by the way, myself included, that it needs to improve. But imagine how bad other offensive lines are if we think the 49ers offensive line is that bad and it's not even like bottom half of the league. How bad is offensive play across the league or offensive line play? It is not good at all. That's an area where like man, you hope that these younger players like you can develop that position better or grow that position better. I mean, that is a major area of opportunity for the whole NFL. That's rough. It's rough. Uh, yeah, you guys are going ham in the chat, huh? I see. I see you. We became Deebo centric on. We became Deebo centric. Can I also? I want to point this out. I have a real issue with this one. Okay. So there are things that myself or other 49er fans will say that get a ton of backlash. A ton of backlash. I do find it funny though that when the truth comes out, that the organization feels the exact same way in some of these scenarios. Deebo Samuel is a great example of this. After the Super Bowl, a lot of 49er fans were pissed that he was quote unquote force fed in that Super Bowl and that he didn't produce. And it was like, dude, they got to get rid of him. Like this is not going to work. You cannot continue to force feed this guy. He's not worth the money anymore. He's clearly not as good as he was. Absolutely not. It's like, oh God. I mean, it's not Deebo's fault, and you're such a hater. This, and if CMC didn't fumble that, and just everything that came out, and in the wall of protection that some fans had for Deebo Samuel after that Super Bowl performance and how everybody that disagreed with those protecting him were the biggest haters and non-fans and fakeful and yada, all of it. And yet, the moment he's traded, you get article after article from people that are plugged in that were like, yeah, the moment that the 49ers actually started to sour on Deebo Samuel was after the Super Bowl performance. It's like, oh, really? Because everybody in the front office and on the coaching staff had two eyes and saw exactly what everybody else saw, except for those that wanted to gaslight the fan base as if they weren't real fans because they were willing to say it. Like, I do find that interesting every single time. Every single time. It's like, oh, eventually the truth comes out. The people within the building that are decision makers have the same exact opinion and are probably having way harsher conversations than Jesse on YouTube or Monza on Twitter or whatever. But the backlash that fans receive for telling it how they see it is hilarious. And the moment that the organization basically speaks on an incident after the fact and it agrees with the quote unquote haters, nothing. Literally nothing. People shut their mouth and act like they didn't gaslight the fan base, didn't try to hold fans' feet to the fire and act like they were fake fans. It's wild to me. Absolutely blows my mind every single time. Every single time. And it's the same people every time that do the same garbage and get away with it. Nobody ever holds them accountable, ever. That's crazy to me. Because every story that's come out since Deebo's gotten traded was like, yeah, the moment the 49ers were out, after the Super Bowl performance. No crap, that was the moment. We all saw it. We all saw it. Oh, you don't got to throw his jersey away. Daza says, Burrow, 51 sacks the year he made the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy had 31 this season. The O-line wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. Yeah, I mean, no, it wasn't as bad as that offensive line, but Burrow also, that's the thing about like Brock this year. He led the league in quarterback led sacks, meaning like he was the reason for the sacks. Joe Burrow also that year, I don't know what the number is, but I remember watching in every single game, it felt like he walked into a sack or could have avoided a sack and just didn't do it because he was trying to make a play. So, like quarterback sacks or sacks in general, if somebody has 50, yes, a lot of those are on the offensive line, and the offensive line is probably not good. I agree with that. But a lot of times sacks are on quarterbacks, and mostly nobody ever points that out. Very rarely does that get pointed out. Like Justin Fields was a great example of it when he was in Chicago. Everybody, oh, his offensive line is this. And it's like, well, when you watch him play, he's walking into multiple sacks every single game. So if he's accounting for 2 sacks a game and we want to go ahead and remove those, how bad is the offensive line really? I mean, it doesn't mean the offensive line is great, but is it historically bad? Probably not. A lot of and quarterbacks are this way. Usually younger quarterbacks are this way. It would be nice to get a legit center for sure. For sure. Who? Oh, are you talking about my comment? It's the same corner of the fan base every time. Like, what do you mean who? Like, not like a specific name, but like the accounts when you see them on Twitter, like, oh, this guy again. Jeez. I don't know. I'd have to go. Let me go through my people that I've muted and give you ats because I probably got 50 of them I can give you. Just mute these people. Like you can't even have a conversation with them. There's zero intelligence there. Rolling up my bedtime doobie. Okay, that's not how I read that. Jake Brindle needs to stop bird watching in the Raptors every snap. Nice. Nice. Yeah, but see, this is like a sweeping comment. The O-line, wasn't awful, but no one was open. Oh, never mind. I read that differently. I thought you said the O-line was awful and no one was open. I'm like, really? Both of those things? Yeah, there were a lot of times. We saw that. I mean, we watched a lot of film together this year. There was definitely times where people weren't open, for sure. And honestly, when you look at the O-line and their ranking, the reason they ranked worse than ever is because they were awful in the run game. They weren't creating running lanes, believe it or not. They were actually worse in run blocking than they were pass blocking, which is crazy to think. There you go, right there. See? Dak Prescott fan base, you cannot have a conversation. All right. No Dallas Cowboys fans, huh? It was horrific. Yeah. Yeah. I remember making a statement like after week 2. I said, if we can just have a single week where Jake Brindle doesn't get pushed over onto his butt like a child, that would be great. I would like to see that. And it seems like every week after that, he got pushed onto his butt like a child. So you did just say that. Not only would it be nice to get a good proven center, but it would be nice to see the Niners play guys like Drake Nugent, Nick Zakel at the end of the year in games that don't matter anyways. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, I guess if you have a chance to play some of these guys, do it. And it felt like they did and they didn't do it. I don't know. I don't know. All right, y'all. Listen, I think tomorrow night, 4-man front over on Coach's channel. So check it out over there. We'll be live over there. Papa J says, Jesse, Drew Dahlman is projected to receive 5-year, $72 million contract. Any thoughts on that? 5 years, 72 million. So what, 14-ish a year? It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I could live with that. I could live with that. Yeah. I don't know about like sign me up for sure, but I could listen to that. Jesse, what do you see for the team in the next 2 to 3 seasons? If they pass on paying Brock, do they have a better chance at 6? That's tough. Because Brock is going to be, I've talked about this a million times. Brock's going to be inexpensive for 2 years. So you can still win with Brock when he's inexpensive. And I don't think Brock's a bad quarterback. I just don't think he is what a lot of 49er fans wish he was. That's all. But if he's inexpensive and they build the right team around him, like he can win games. We've seen it. Like, why would I go against what we've clearly seen? Right. But then again, it's like if you truly got rid of Brock, you're trading him for an asset. I don't know. I mean, who are you getting in return? Like this is a really tough hypothetical question. Now, what I will say is, if they move on from Brock, is it impossible that the team would be better off because of it? No, it's not. That's also not impossible. Would I guarantee that they are? No, because I don't know what's coming back in return. Would I prefer they don't sign him to a massive, massive contract? Absolutely. But for the first 2 years of that contract, it's gonna be manageable. As long as they structure it right, it'll be manageable. So, do you think that Mick Lombardi is the right guy to take Brock to the next level? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know much about Mick Lombardi. I will say, I mean, at his age, he's been around for a long time. Um, I don't know. I think Brock's going to be as good as his health and his willingness to work will allow. I mean, every player has a ceiling, but he can still press that ceiling more. It's not like he's up against it. Um, if he stays healthy, continues to build up that arm, and works his butt off the way that he has, I believe, the first few years, I don't think it matters who the quarterback coach is. I mean, listen, Justin Herbert and Justin Herbert's had 4 offensive coordinators in 6 years or whatever. Baker Mayfield has literally had we're not talking quarterback coaches. We're talking about the guys who are calling the plays. Baker Mayfield has had a different offensive coordinator every single year of his career. Every year of his career. And he just put up back-to-back pretty good years. So losing Greasy, it's like, whatever. I mean, at this point, Brock's not a rookie. He knows what the league expectations are. He knows how to play in this league. He knows what works. He knows what doesn't. He knows the offense inside and out. I don't think that Greasy, Mick Lombardi, I don't think it really matters, to be real with you. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Jesse, do you think Kyle will get another chance at quarterback if they move on from Brock, or will Jed call the era over and reset? I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, does he look at them as a package deal? Does he if he had to choose, would he choose Brock? Would he choose Kyle? Um, I think Kyle's fate is hitched to the wagon of Brock Purdy. I do. Yeah, I do. I do. Oh no, I just thought you were saying you're going to bed. I don't know. I didn't expect that other half of it being in there. I thought you were just saying you're rolling up on bedtime. Um, I will say, make sure that you check out the sponsor of today's show, Underdog. Links in the description. Promo code LSS. That'll get you a deposit match of up to $1,000, 50% up to $1,000, and your one free play, whether it's baseball, MMA, hockey, basketball, more or less is fantasy. They got you covered. Check them out. Underdog has been a sponsor really for like 8 months. They've been an awesome sponsor of the channel. I really appreciate them. Partnership couldn't have been any better. So definitely go check them out. Go show them love the way that they've shown the channel love. It is time for me to get out of here. I appreciate all of you. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow, 4-man front on Coach's channel. Go check it out. And I'm working on an NFC West roundtable. For those of you that watch the NFC West roundtable on Roundtable Sports, during the off season, it's not a consistent thing. So I am working on bringing us 4 guys together once every other week to just kind of catch up on the division, educate all of our fan bases on what's going on in the division. I really like those guys that I do that show with. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, look out for it. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a Cardinals content creator, a Rams content creator, Seahawks content creator, and myself. And we'll just be talking about like what's going on in the division, free agency, draft. We'll do mock drafts together, that type of stuff. So be on the lookout for that. We'll either be starting that tomorrow or in 3 weeks from now, just depending on how things fall. So much love until tomorrow for sure. 4-man front, maybe the roundtable show. We'll see you then. Appreciate you for tapping in and always showing love to the channel. Much love back to you. Peace.